Hi, this is Winker Reviews, and today I will be doing a video on Spree, about a troubled young man who is so desperate for online fame that he will do anything to achieve it. At first, I had no interest in the trailer. It looked like the type of movie I would avoid simply because I hate most YouTubers. I honestly can't stand social media influencers. I just hate the whole culture. But I decided to watch it only because I had nothing else better to do. When the movie first starts, we're introduced to a wannabe YouTuber who's trying to gain a following. He's been trying for years and he's never garnered much views. He reaches a point of desperation. Joe Curry does a good job at portraying a annoying generic YouTube personality. A lot of these YouTubers nowadays have the same two-dimensional persona where you're always outgoing and you're loud and there's a million jump cuts and telling your audience to smash that like button. It's so annoying, and I honestly got an instant headache within the first 2 minutes. I just can't stand YouTubers. They just all just seem like they're doing the same thing and they're just copying each other. So like I said before, Joe Curry did a great job at portraying someone who, instead of using their own natural personality to gain attention, they instead copy other people, and it doesn't work because he just comes off as very boring and generic. The movie is basically a satire about someone who is desperate for attention. It reminded me a lot of Luka Magnotta. If you don't know who that is, he abused animals and even killed someone on camera just because he wanted attention. He was someone who had a very dry, dull personality, and he didn't make it as an actor or a reality star. He couldn't make it as a celebrity because he was just so boring, so he resulted in killing. And that's basically what this movie is. One thing that I liked was that it poked fun at how desensitized society is, and how even if you're killing someone on camera, you need to do it with some flair because just killing someone or killing a bunch of people is boring. So I thought that was kind of funny. Another thing that I liked, there were two instances in this movie that come out of nowhere and that were really shocking and creative. Unfortunately, those shots were far and few. Majority of this movie just isn't interesting, and the whole time I'm thinking, okay, this is going to lead to something, to a real big finale. And it does, but by the time that happens, I'm not impressed with anything I'm watching. One thing that I really did not like was how the movie was shot. I'm used to found footage type of movies, but I really did not like the 2 or 3 point of view iPhone camera angles that this had. There were times, for the most part, that you had like 3 different angles side by side, and you had to pretty much pay attention to all 3 of them at the same time, or you would miss something, and that made for a very difficult watch, and it really took any sort of enjoyment out of it. I kept having to rewind certain parts because I kept missing certain things that would happen. I honestly felt like most of the movie should have been shot from the lead character's point of view. There were times where we really did not need to see his face, and we could have just gotten a view of what he was seeing instead of what he was seeing and what other characters were seeing. I thought that was just very cluttery, and it was just very difficult deciding which side of the screen I was supposed to pay attention to. Earlier in the movie, we're introduced to passengers because the lead character is basically a Lyft Uber type of driver, and he works for a company called Spree. So he's driving around these passengers in a share ride, and it's very obnoxious. And this is exactly what I was afraid of, the whole YouTube social media culture that makes me cringe, where people always have their cell phones out. But in these particular scenes, it was super annoying. It seemed very improvised the entire time. it didn't feel right. It didn't feel authentic. It felt very staged. Everyone was so loud and was arguing, or they were like obnoxiously drunk. And it was just very irritating because the ad libbing was bad, thus, the acting was very bad. So, that was my major issue. Like, the acting for the most part is pretty terrible because there isn't really a script, it's just a bunch of improvised ad libbing. It doesn't feel like real interactions. It just feels so fabricated. And I don't know if it's just the writing. It's most likely the writing or the lack of writing. But Joe Curry, who plays the lead, just didn't have the oomph to carry a movie like this. His performance is very one note, and he just doesn't really have the charisma. Or again, I'm not familiar with his work, but he just doesn't have the versatility to carry a character like this, because a character like this should have been interesting. A guy who's so desperate for attention, who wants approval, who wants to be successful. Like, there should be layers to his personality, at least when he's by himself, or at least when he finally turns ultra psycho. Because I did give him a compliment at the beginning. I think he does do a good job at playing a generic wannabe YouTuber, but he does the same thing from the beginning to the end. When he goes full psycho, it's still not interesting to watch, unfortunately. But I do have to say that there were glimmers of potential. There were times where he had that crazy, psychotic look in his eye. So he would make a good serial killer. I honestly do believe it's just the material is so silly and it's holding him back. And I get the movie is supposed to be silly, it just didn't work for me. It just wasn't my cup of tea. And for that, I seriously have to only give this a 2 out of 10. It just really did not do a lot for me. Although there were 2 scenes in this movie that were surprising and entertaining. But yeah, 2 out of 10.